Hi, welcome to Stir 'em Up. I'm Susie.
And I'm Naomi, and today we're going to be talking about what to look for in a life partner. So I have a question for you.
Okay.
Did you ever, when you were growing up, have a checklist of what you wanted in a husband? Blonde hair or brown hair?
I did. I did want to marry a man that had dark hair and blue eyes.
Very cool.
That was high on my priority list.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like growing up, I went to a lot of conferences and stuff that always talked about making a list of your top 10 qualities in a guy or whatever. And a lot of times they were kind of vain. They'd be I want blonde hair or curly hair, or I want this or that. And I think preferences are fine, but I don't think they're a good foundation for a marriage.
Not to build your marriage on.
Yeah, and I think, even though broken marriages can be restored, I think it is so much better if you can start out on a right foundation.
Yeah, there's a book by Truett Cathy. It says it's easier to build boys than to mend men. And that's the same principle that we're going with. It's easier to build a marriage and start it on the right foundation than it is to fix it.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not been started right.
And I think Paul gives some pretty solid dating, but it's also just general, even relationship advice. In 2 Corinthians 6:14, when he says, "Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness, or what fellowship has light with darkness?"
Yeah.
And so to start off, I think that a healthy dating or marriage relationship needs to start with a shared love for God and for life. And I think that the things we love are often the things that drive us, and they set our priorities in life. And I think that's why Paul starts off by saying, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. Because as a believer, our love for God needs to be our greatest love, and it needs to be what drives everything we do.
Yeah.
And if we're dating or if we marry somebody that does not love God, we're going to be pulling into completely different directions.
Right.
But I think it also leads to a lot of frustration because they don't understand why you're doing what you're doing.
Oh, yes. There's so much that can be added to that. But Naomi, in addition to our love for God, I think it's also important that we share common love of other things, not just of God with our
I would agree. Because I think sometimes people maybe have this love for sports, or maybe they have a love for travel or something like that.
Yes.
And those are great things. But if you marry somebody that doesn't like those things, you're going to find yourself just frustrated. And I mean, obviously, Caleb and I are different. We like different things.
Sure.
But I think the things we really love, like coffee or, traveling, we both love them. And so we both want to do them. And so I do agree. I think having a shared love for God, but then just a shared love for things in life, I think is very important.
I think too that we can grow into this shared love.
Yes.
Because when I love somebody, I love the things that he loves, and we end up growing into each other.
Yeah. So I think it's important to be equally yoked. You need to be pulling in the same direction. And in general, you need to love or work towards loving the same things. But secondly, I think a healthy dating/marriage relationship is also something that's going to build us up and make us better. And so I think about the relationships, well, in general, any relationship, I think really shapes who we are. The relationship,
it does.
They help shape your priorities. They shape, what you believe about things. And I think that's why Paul says, what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? There really is no partnership. There's no partnership with righteousness and lawlessness. They have completely different goals. They're going in completely different directions. And I think that in relationships too, if you're not headed in the same direction, you're not going to make each other better.
No, and you're pulling opposite ways in so many ways. So if during a dating relationship, two people are not making each other better, then they're probably not going to make each other better in marriage.
I agree. The person that you're dating / someday hopefully will marry should help you be a better reflection of Christ.
Yeah.
They should be helping you in the areas you're weak. They should just in general be helping you to grow into maturity. And if they're not doing that, I think that's a huge red flag.
I think the big word maybe 10 years ago was synergistic. And
I've never heard that
should
word.
be synergistic.
Oh, yeah, like synergy. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I agree. So, first of all, I think you need to love God and love life, like in a similar way. And then I think you need to find somebody that makes you better, so you're better together.
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, I think a healthy dating / marriage relationship means that you get to spend life with your best friend.
Yeah.
Paul writes, "What fellowship has light with darkness?" And I think true friendship only comes when you're able to be fully transparent and intimate with somebody.
I agree.
Because if a friend like knows who you are and still loves you, that's true friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And there has to be light, not darkness. And I think in a dating and a marriage relationship, and that's really a reflection of the gospel and of Christ, you need to be able to be fully transparent with somebody, and then they still show you that love, even though maybe you're broken or there's pieces of your life that you're not proud of. And I remember when Caleb and I were dating, there came a point, it wasn't like right away, like it wasn't like in the first 2 weeks, but I remember pretty quickly into that relationship, there were things we both had to share with each other that were kind of hard. Like there were things that we were like, you know, if I tell a person this, will they still like me? And I remember like after sharing, I shared and then he shared, I remember there was such like freedom and like such a closeness, because it was like, okay, that person knows everything and they still love me, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that's very important,
Which is such a beautiful picture of the gospel,
Yeah.
because that's what Christ does. And the Father knows everything about us, and he still chose us.
Yeah. And so I think like if you're dating somebody and you're getting close to that point where you're like wanting to get engaged or married, and there's still things you're not willing to share with them, I think that's a huge red flag. And I think that's something that you need to be aware of. But on the flip side, I think, you know, if that person knows everything and you're like, this is my best friend, that's how marriage really should be, you know? And it's so beautiful.
It is. There should be a fellowship with your partner.
Yeah.
That you share things with them that you don't share with anybody else.
Yeah. And so, in conclusion, I just think, so these 3 things are things that I know for me, like as I was dating, were really helpful, and I've shared with other people too, but I think that they're important. It's important to realize these aren't things that you're maybe going to see right away when you start dating, but they're things that you need to be growing into.
Yeah, that's
and I
good.
think that they're things that are more markers and indicators if you should marry somebody.
I really like that, because
Yeah.
I like that you said it should be a red flag and grow into this, and I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope we stirred you up into what to look for maybe in a life partner.
Yes, and as Hebrews 10:24 says, let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works. So go stir someone up.